Good morning, good evening, and good night, wherever you are, and welcome to Requiem Chronicles, the City of Martyrs. And we begin our scene in a very sort of old, gloomy cemetery. Weeds and vines seem to be scattered along the cold and ancient stones that scatter around this place. The moonlight sort of dimly lit shines through the branches, through the leaves and the trees that are blowing by. And this light seems to just illuminate this one particular area where we find an individual who seems to be staring at two very cold graves.
The man who is staring at them is Joseph Zamarin, a kindred who has not been very present in this past month in the affairs of London, but has been tending to his own business in the cemetery, finally re-emerging with his ghoul, Caleb Khan, on this night in particular to pay their respects to two fallen friends of Joseph's, Antonio and Maria de Santa, who both died by Joseph's hand and, well, technically by his hand. The bunny, who many years ago forced Joseph into frenzy, into killing both of his friends, his ghouls, but they were much more than that to him. They were some of the closest confidants that he had when he first came to London. And now he kneels over their grave with a lit candle in his hand. He is not praying for them, for Joseph is not a man of God, but more he is holding on to their memory. Just sitting there, looking at these very cold graves. But around him, all the other graves are strewn about, almost at random, it would seem. Dirty, they are covered in muck and grime, but these two Joseph has paid special attention to make sure that they are clean, that they are proper, they are neat, for it is befitting his two best friends. Behind him, his ghoul stands by a large oak tree, toking on a joint. Joseph is not one who condones narcotics at all, but he's not going to complain right now. It is Caleb's decision, and he's not going to get in his way of that, as long as Caleb can do his job well. But he just sits there, staring at these graves with his cold, dead eyes, just for the longest time, lost in thought. Maybe an hour passes, maybe two. Caleb leaves at different points, but he always comes back to make sure that his master is safe.
And as this goes on, and as you just stand still, as you're just staring at these two cold graves, and you yourself appear as a statue, as if the wind is blowing, but your clothes don't seem to move. The light seems to illuminate everything else, but you seem to be kept in the shadows. And you find yourself, it's a sort of stillness in the scene. And you yourself seem to be a part of the graves, a statue in a cemetery. No breath, no life. And as the scene progresses, eventually you sense something. A smell on the wind, a whisper. Your beast alerts you. It reminds you. It sort of as if a silent scream to alert you. As you feel the presence of another kindred coming. He's definitely around in your haven somewhere. And from a distance of shadow, you see a figure sort of walking towards you.
I very calmly make a small hand motion behind my back to Caleb. That hand motion indicates pull your knife now. And Caleb does. He reaches into his pocket and calmly produces a switchblade, flicks it open, and keeps it at his side, but walks over to his master. And Joseph does not stand, actually, at this point. He just keeps staring at the grave. This is his moment. Whoever this is, they have intruded on his domain, and they will not be given any respect until they show themselves.
As the figure seems to get closer and closer, your senses kick in. Your eyes go sharper. You can smell and sense the individual as they come towards you, and you hear the sounds of like very heavy sort of footsteps, and a figure does emerge. And as he gets closer to you, it's strange. It's as if his whole form is, he's wearing a suit and he has this kind of sharp blonde hair, but the rest of him just seems to be as if covered in constant shadow, as if he's, even in bright sort of moonlight, it seems his figure, his form is hidden. And only those very bright, sort of shiny, sort of kindred eyes that reflect the light, so empty and hollow, sort of beam outwards. And he sort of slowly sort of walks to you, very calmly, doing his utmost to not offend or to awaken any beast. He even sort of subjugates himself slightly. He's very in control of his beast. And he kind of goes to you and just bows from a distance and speaks. I apologize for approaching you on your domain, but I believe a personal one-to-one was needed. I know who you are, and I am, well, you may call me Arthur, of the Invictus, House of the Silent Mother.
Victus, I was not expecting you upon this night. I was expecting maybe a Carthian or some other desperate young one to come here, but not an Invictus. What brings you here, Arthur?
I am pleased that you're surprised, and the thought of a Carthian existing in London I find most amusing, as I believe they've been wiped out. But for my business here, I wish to propose a deal, a business transaction. London is awakening. Kindred are returning. Policies must be installed. Industries must be remade.
Policies and industry. At this point, I actually make eye contact with him. I stand at this point. I motion to Caleb, put the knife away. And he does, and he respectfully gives some distance between me and Arthur. And I turn to face him. I am not one for politics, senor. Why would you come to me?
There are so few kindred in London, and I wish to establish the old ways back to London. And of course, one can never achieve this by oneself. I'm in the need of allies, contacts, reliable individuals, such as yourself.
Before we continue, may I ask, Arthur, where have you heard of me from?
The Silent Mother knows many things.
I smile at that. It's almost a knowing smile that he already knows. Joseph knows the Invictus, knows who he is. He knows that they sold him out to the bunny at one point, but he bears little grudge. They are dealers of secrets, are they not? And he just sort of stares at Arthur, kind of eyeing him up to try to like assess, making an assessment of this individual. What are his clothes like? What are how his hair is cut? Looks like a rich man.
As you look, no need to roll. If you're just gauging on what he looks, very sharp individual. As you get closer to him, you seem more able to easily see him, and he does seem to have this sort of shroud of darkness that just seems to just dim him slightly, just makes him out of focus, just out of the light. But as you get closer, yes, he is wearing a very refined suit, tie, shirt. Everything is impeccable. It's organized. It's straight. It's like measured to perfection. And of course, the hair and any facial features is just perfect. Every strand in its place. And actually, he reminds you of a corpse. He reminds you of one of your funeral corpses. Just someone who's after the process of being shown to their family. It's perfect for a display person. And his features are one of somewhat friendliness. He smiles, he sort of quirks his head, but it's a very, in some way, he comes across somewhat creepy. That he's trying to enact human emotions, but he's overdoing it.
I smile at this. You remind me of myself in many ways. What deal are you offering, Sir Arthur?
I wish to make certain arrangements with certain kindred who have now re-entered the city and establish one of our strongest laws, the masquerade. You see, the enlightened that seem to run this city know of our existence. And I do not wish for this to spread. And already, as I'm sure you've heard of the rumors of nights of cemeteries on fire, tunnels being emptied of their cursed beings, dead bodies are starting to stack, my friend. And we need a way to make sure these bodies are disposed of accordingly and properly.
You need a cemetery, man.
Yes, that would be the correct analogy.
Well, I have always supported the masquerade, senor. So I could see that we could arrange a deal. Yes. And I despise these bastards, these enlightened ones, just as much as you do, maybe more so. I do not know your personal convictions about religion, but I hate it. And seeing these cultists running around, filling their followers' heads full of nonsense and dogma, makes me want to vomit. You need a place where the bodies are buried, and I can provide that. The question is, what do I get? I'm not running a charity here, of course.
'Tis good that you have seen the reason of this deal and my offering it to you. In answer to your regards of the enlightened, I see them as nothing more than another problem that needs to be solved. I find that all of us have to follow something, be it religion, madness, or money. It's all the same. But the deal I wish to offer you, of course, you'll be compensated for whatever means or personnel that needs to be politely removed. Evidence, bodies, people, pieces. If these are buried or removed successfully, you'll receive money, blood, personnel, would be your tipple?
Blood is good, money is good, personnel is good, but I'm also looking for information. Information.
A very expensive asset, I find.
Yes. Very specific information in regards to, well, the University of London. Things happened there many years ago, and I want to know what happened. In regards to the, well, Draculas.
He pauses, and his kind of friendly face and features go solid, go very straight, and he kind of folds his arm and places one of his hands up and puts a finger on his chin as he begins to think. And he sort of just begins to sort of take a slow pace back and forth. Very well. As a sign, a good faith gesture, I will provide some information regarding the university. In return, we have a particular situation, an individual who needs to be removed. I'm sure you'll be able to take care of this.
I and my associate will be able to.
Very well. We'll consider this a transaction, a first attempt at the trade deal. From then on, we will compensate with money, blood, whatever form you wish. In regards to information, any future purchases will be of a higher price. If we have terms, I can agree to this.
These are reasonable terms. I agree.
He just takes sort of a bow, and it's as if he sort of pauses his eyes, as if like the wind starts to blow, as if something's happened, as if you both agreed, and there's a kind of some sort of bond or an understanding that's just happened. And he just says, very well. In regards to the university, I believe the Night of Storms obliterated whatever kindred resided there. I understand that the Ordo Dracul fortified the university, bastioned themselves inside to protect the artifacts, treasures, and themselves from the dreaded blood war that occurred between the Carthians and the Invictus. Unfortunately, it would seem that this fortification was their undoing, as the building was set ablaze and burned to the ground. In regards to it in its current condition now, I believe the Enlightened have shown great interest in rebuilding the structure. Perhaps they wish to pillage the secrets deep inside.
Thank you very much, Senor. Now, who is this individual you need disposed of?
In 2 days' time, there will be a body, and you will be finding at this location. He just provides a card, and it has like an address. There perhaps may be more than one, but we will compensate for any extra. We wish for these bodies to be completely removed. No trace, no sign or sight of them. How they're disposed and how you pick them up, I will leave to your discretion. But if you do dealings with the Invictus, please obey our laws and standings regarding the masquerade, and this secrecy we hold above everything else. Oh, I believe our other player is distracted, so I'll just carry on describing.
Sorry about that. Understood, Arthur. Now, is there anything else you wish to discuss?
On a just purely curious note, please refuse my question. I do not mean any offense, but what is your... Oh, he's distracted. I am curious of the scene before us. These two graves seem to hold some importance to you. Is it something I'm not unaware of, as it were?
Old friends.
He kind of looks to the graves, and he's about to approach them, or to get close to them, or to read them. But of course, because these are your touch, these are very important to you, and I think even your beast kind of flares up if he does go near them. But he will sense that, and he will kind of just retract his hands and just merely stay from a distance, and sort of kneels his head and just to have a look. Most of our kind tend not to have friends, especially mortal ones, but I only wish that they did not suffer during their final moments.
I wish they hadn't.
Apologies. This seems to be oh yeah, no, it seems a common occurrence with our kind and mortal friends. I too have suffered, as well as many others. And he's about to sort of say something more, but then he kind of realizes what he's saying and he's mumbling, so he just stops and goes, in any case, I will leave you back to your meditation. I bid thee a good night.
Good evening to you as well, Arthur.
Again, he sort of just nods, does a slight bow, and then proceeds to start to just walk. And he has his hands behind his back at this point. And as he walks, again, it's the way he's moving, it's very heavy footsteps. And even on the mud and the floor around you, his footsteps seem to be very heavy as he walks back. And of course, if you see in a distance, you see him walking off to where there's a little road or a path, and he gets into a car. And it seems to be like 3 cars. They're sort of lined up in a road sort of opposite you. One of them being a limousine, which is the one he gets in. And they all seem to just sort of leave. And you even notice some other people seem to get back into their cars as if there were some more people scattered around. But now they have left, and you are now alone. This cold graves before you and the eerie moonlight shining.
I look down at the graves again. Give them a nice, long look. Without even looking at him, I say, Caleb, we have much work to do. So go get your shovel, and I'll go get body bags. And with that, Caleb simply begins walking off towards a small shed nearby. And finally, Joseph sets down the candle he's been holding this entire time, in the middle between the 2 graves. Rest well, my friends, and forgive me for what I am about to do.
Yeah.
And he simply walks off at this point.
And with that, we can happily end scene on this night of the past dead and the new dead. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show.